In this particular video, I, in a roundabout way, want to answer the question, why would I undertake Lean and Six Sigma type training? I've heard it said over the years that, our business is not relevant to Lean, or Six Sigma is not appropriate for the type of work that we do. And I think the foundation for that is a misunderstanding of what these methodologies are all about. That misunderstanding often stems from the way people observe what's in place in other industries. So, for example, people associate Lean with Toyota production systems. They'll associate it with motor vehicle manufacturing, and therefore, because it's in the manufacturing domain, it's not relevant to their business, which may be in some sort of production type area or service industry or something like that. And as I said, it's a misunderstanding of the real use and the real purpose behind these different methodologies. So in this particular video, I'm going to draw you a diagram, and the diagram is probably the simplest way I know of first of all explaining the difference between the different types of methodologies that we undertake capability development in, and secondly, how it fits or interacts with the key concept of any business. If you take a look at what I've drawn on the desktop here, what this is meant to indicate is pretty much the situation which exists in every single business. And that is, your business produces a product or a service at the end for a customer. And there's a series of functions or activity that lead up to that. Nearly every business, or every business I've ever interacted with, is fundamentally made up of this type of value stream concept. A series of actions or functions that develop and deliver a product or service to a customer. Now, if your focus is on trying to get things through that process, right? So we're talking about throughput rates, cycle time for delivery, anything associated with managing inventory or work in progress, any of those types of things, then the methodology that relates to that is Lean, and you could also include in there theory of constraints. So these two methodologies are primarily designed around looking at a value stream, looking at a process, and addressing throughput or cycle time or inventory or waste type issues from an efficiency perspective as you work through that process. So that's Lean. Lean has application in every single business I've ever seen. Now, the second part of it is this. If you look at this product or service that we deliver, a customer would have some sort of requirements about the quality of that product or service. So potentially the easiest way to explain it would be to reference this pen. So if I sold these pens to a customer, the customer might specify the length of that pen as one of their criteria. And they'd say, let's just estimate, we want that pen to be within 1 millimeter, plus or minus 1 millimeter of 200 millimeters long. So you've got this 2 millimeter, gap within which you can produce a product lengthwise in terms of meeting the customer's requirements. Now, if we measured the length of those pens, we would find that there's variation in the length. If we're not finding variation in the length across various pens, then we're just not measuring fine enough. It's as simple as that. We could take certain components, go upstream and say, a key part of meeting that requirement at the end is to make sure that the length of the cap is a certain measurement. So that would be an upstream measurement, and there would be variation in that. Sometimes the variation wouldn't just be consistent. We might find that we get some sort of outlier. Now, the way to understand methodologies, throughput, cycle time, inventory, that's the focus of Lean and theory of constraints and that type of methodology. The methodology that addresses and helps you control variation is Six Sigma. So Six Sigma is a quantitative type methodology that looks at a range of data, so it collects data information and then analyzes that to understand the variation that we're seeing and what it is that potentially may create that variation within the process. Like I said, that's Six Sigma. Now, down here with this specific outlier, the problem with that particular situation is Six Sigma relies very heavily on, a collection of data, so multiple data points in order to be able to use the tools effectively. In this particular case where you have an outlier, it's only one data point. So Six Sigma is not relevant to fixing that type of thing, nor is Lean or theory of constraints. The things that address that are systematic problem solving, Kepner-Trigot, ICAM in a safety type scenario, Apollo root cause, TAP root, and there's probably a whole bunch of other methodologies that are specifically designed for addressing these outlier type situations where you get a special cause event occurring. So just to backtrack, lean and theory of constraints helps you work on throughput, cycle time issues, inventory type stuff, so that you're more efficient in the delivering of a product or a service. Six Sigma addresses variation in the quality of that product or service, and these problem-solving methodologies are all designed primarily to address one data point type specific special cause type events. So that pretty much explains, in a nutshell, what the different methodologies address within a process or a value stream. So the point that I'm trying to make here is that everyone's trying to address throughput issues and trying to become more efficient in that. Lean has application for sure. In many situations, we're addressing quality issues and the variation in our process. The cycle time could vary quite a bit, and it's outside of expectations on some occasions. Six Sigma has its place there. So these methodologies have application in every single business. The second thing I want to explain in here is that it's not simply a matter of seeing these things in isolation to one another. The reality is it's more like a Venn diagram in that the toolbox for improvement, so let's just draw our little toolbox here. The toolbox for improvement contains a whole bunch of different tools, right? Lean makes up a big portion of it. Six Sigma can make up a big portion of it. Systematic problem-solving tools, theory of constraints, any of the, facilitation, agile, sprint workshops, those types of things. They're just a bunch of tools, from a methodology that fit within this overall business improvement toolbox. And the reality is, people who've done many projects realize this, that it's not one or the other. We might find that we do some data analysis leading into identifying where we put our energies to fix some sort of process problem, and we might end up solving it with more of a focus on lean tools. Or we might find that we're getting, through data analysis, we find that we've got some outlier events. We might problem solve those and eliminate those through using some sort of problem solving tool. The point I'm trying to make here is it's not one methodology or the other. It's just this giant toolbox of methodologies that all complement one another. And the reality for me has been over the last 20 years or so of doing projects is that I kind of dip into each of these methodologies for every single project I've done. So anyone who says to me that, these methodologies, first of all, are not relevant, right, is misinformed. The second thing is anybody who is a zealot about a single methodology doesn't understand the interaction and the benefits of having a giant toolbox where you can draw from the different tools within each of those methodologies. The last thing I want to point out is we've been talking about methodologies which are very technically oriented, but there's another part to the equation, and that is the soft skill side of it, because these go hand in hand with these methodologies as well. So if you think about this for a second, basically, the process of change consists of three fundamental overarching steps. And that is where we come up with some sort of idea for change, right? We would leave that group or the bunch of people that we assemble together to come up with the idea. We would then go and pitch that to other stakeholders. That could be for the purpose of getting permission to actually implement it, or it could be for the ultimate reason of getting stakeholders on board before you do the implementation. Then you go to the third phase, and that is where you implement the idea. So you've got the idea, you pitch it, and then you go and implement that idea or execute the business improvement idea in the business. Now, the idea generation, Lean, Six Sigma, strategy workshops, etc., right? There's a whole bunch of different methodologies which help you come up with the idea, right? So it's no single, all of these particular methodologies are around coming up with ideas that solve problems or take you to the next level in business success. Now, the point I want to make here is in the idea generation, there's a combination of soft skills and technical skills. Right, technical skills would be the specific tools within Lean and Six Sigma. The soft skills would be facilitation, relationship management, stakeholder engagement, that type of thing. So there is a combination of these tools or these skill sets to come up with an idea that people buy into. When you get to the pitching side side of it, it's mostly soft skills to get people on board with an idea that's going to add value. Then when you get to the implementation phase, again, we're back to soft skills plus technical change management skills, which are combined. And the point I'm trying to make here is the Lean Six Sigma type tools, theory of constraints and that type of thing, address some of the technical skills that we need, but the soft skills can't be understated in terms of their importance to the whole process. So if you're doing any type of training in business improvement, particularly in the Lean Six Sigma space, right, it needs to be balanced with a combination of soft skills because these go hand in hand, and that is the harsh reality. So that's it from me in this particular video. In the next video, the next couple of videos, we're going to look at a bit more detail around Lean and a bit more detail around Six Sigma. So you get an understanding of what makes up quality type training or education in those particular methodologies. I'll see you in the next video.